voices, the 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 voices. It's actually, I'm 2 weeks from moving halfway across Pennsylvania.
Huh. 2 weeks. So where are you moving to?
Carlisle.
Ah, Carlisle, PA.
So I,
I
I got a new, I started a new job in the beginning of the year. Well, it's still a software training job, but with a new company.
right.
And they're based out of Camp Hill, right
Hmm,
by Mechanicsburg, between Mechanicsburg and Harrisburg.
right. So you'll be moving
So
moving on out.
moving out there, and Carlisle, cool college town.
Yeah, yeah.
My brother and my nephew went there, but the best thing about it is it's right smack dab in between the Michaud State Forest and the Tuscarora State Forest,
Nice.
and I'm just gonna have outdoor playland everywhere.
Mm, that's gonna be fantastic, man. I love it. Love to
Definitely
hear it.
looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's one of the things that I enjoy about Southern Arizona is that anything you want to do, you're 2 hours from it tops. Unless you
Yeah,
you know go to San Diego or it's 6 hours. But if I want mountains, I got it. If I want forest, I got it. If I want open Sonoran Desert, I got it. That's where I am. You want to go to the beach, you head 2 hours south to Rocky Point. So it's uh, every in terms of being outdoors and enjoying nature and the beauty of it. This is a fantastic. The Southwest is just breathtakingly beautiful.
oh yes,
So this is a fantastic place to be.
so many places out there I still need to get to.
Mm,
Tops on the list: Zion and Bryce.
mm. Good call.
And I want to go to Monument Valley and
Right.
Arches National Park and all
All the
that kind of
stuff you
stuff.
watched on TV, they're like, "Is that real? Am I going to see like the coyote and the roadrunner like, shooting through there?"
So I watched this YouTube documentary
Mm,
on how social media has ruined um, the outdoor, the great outdoor spaces.
hmm,
So there's this place out in the Southwest, and it's called, I think it's called the Horseshoe. It's a river that goes around in a circle,
mm-hmm.
kind of thing, and it has a little island
Yep.
in
I
it.
know it.
Well, when I first read about that like 8 years ago, the parking lot was 18 miles away, and so it was an 18-mile hike on a largely unmarked trail
Mm-hmm.
to get there. When they did this documentary like 4 years ago, there were like 300 people there
Hmm.
with all standing around the rim taking pictures with uh with their phones.
Yeah,
And it was
sure.
like, oh my god, it almost makes me not even want to go now.
Yeah. And I mean, and on one hand, so to play devil's advocate, we want these outdoor spaces to be accessible to the public, so that
Yeah,
people can enjoy them. Now, the downside of that is since people are fucking idiots, we obviously see that increased population and that increased foot traffic increases litter, increases the destruction and in often cases vandalism of these natural spaces. Where if people could be good little boys and girls, then we'd have all these nice things for each other. But largely, we see that people are not. That
right.
idiot quotient increases
Yeah,
exponentially the more of them we get together. So
and hence the old phrase, uh this is why we can't have nice things.
this is why I live out in the middle of the desert. I'm on 3 1/3 acres, which isn't huge, but it's enough. It gives me a nice
Yeah.
buffer between me and the people, and the people out here are great.
Mhm.
Who would think that me moving to rural Arizona would be this is great, but it actually is. The people in this area are fantastic humans, and um, it's been a wonderful. This is the best place I've ever lived in terms of the people
Wow.
who are here, and obviously the environment and the desert. I love the desert. and just the beauty of it. And it's a slower pace because, I moved from Philly and the East Coast. I moved to LA and I was in San Diego. And, if I had hair, I
Right.
would have pulled it out, right? So, but being here and having that nice buffer between me and the other humans
Yeah.
is it's beautiful. There's great peace where you can go outside and it's so quiet. It reminds me of being back on the East Coast after a fresh, heavy snowfall, where
Hmm.
everything's insulated, and so you don't even hear any reflections off anything, but it's just quiet. And you go
Yeah.
out and you just hear the wind, and at night it's just that and coyotes and the rustling of leaves or some of the it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love it. So yeah, yeah. I wish more people could appreciate our natural spaces, but also in that same breath strive to preserve them so that
Yes.
appreciation can be maintained for other generations of people. Really.
I'm a member at REI,
Mm-hmm.
and they do a lot to promote that sustainable use of outdoor spaces.
Right. Right. See it's critically important. I mean, we got one planet, y'all. So let's barring what happens in the future, sci-fi fantasies come true. Um, we really should be making a more concerted effort to preserve what we have in terms of
Well,
the planet
it
and our
was
environment.
amazing in the initial lockdown
Mm-hmm.
how quickly the planet responded to no emissions from cars because no one was driving,
Right,
nobody
right.
outside, and LA had its cleanest air
Yep.
readings recorded.
Yeah, yeah,
And that was just in 6 weeks.
yeah, yeah. So there's hope, but I think the biggest obstacle in that regard is people have to get on board, and if they can't find a profit in it, or if it diminishes that profit, it seems like we're
Mm-hmm.
foolishly driven by financial incentive rather than the common good. Then if then it's basically beating your head against a wall. So either we need more creative solutions that can satisfy that what seems to be our societal need for profit and wealth,
Mm-hmm.
or we need to really find a way to stress the importance of where we live, our very environment. It sounds like, that's hippie tree hugging stuff. If you don't have clean air or clean water, it doesn't really matter what you believe. So
That's right. Yeah.
you can hug a tree or you can, burn books, whatever. It's just you're gonna have a tough time. You're gonna have a tough go of it. So, but I don't
So
know.
I actually came across in um, some study I was doing. So several years ago, I had this big idea of a book that I wanted to write,
Hmm.
and it was called "My Theory of Ascribatory Truth." And the concept is that there's not necessarily any inherent truth. We place truth in things,
Hmm.
and once those truths no longer work for us, we go find them somewhere else. So, which is why people will grow up in a certain belief system and then they'll lose faith and then they'll find themselves in another belief system. But and I was trying to do research into, because I was going to pull in like quantum mechanics
Hmm.
and how uh, even things that we see as solid, there's actually more space in there than there is actually solid.
Sure, sure.
um, and some things like that. But so I started studying the evolution of the human brain, and this one evolutionary psychologist, uh, David Geary, um, and I think his book is Origin of Mind, um, and it's a pretty complex book, and he's trying to get to a theory of how we develop general knowledge.
Hmm.
But the big thing that hit me in there that explains why everything that happens in the world goes on in the world is he said, normally we boil down the evolutionary impulse into two things, procreation and survival. You have to survive long enough to replicate your genetic code. David Geary breaks that down into one thing. He says that in order to survive and procreate, every evolutionary organism must control a certain element of its surroundings in order to survive and procreate. And so he boils it down to one thing called the motivation to control. And since that's evolutionary, it's not rational. It is a drive that we don't know that it exists. And originally that drive was so, we could survive against saber-toothed tigers and in these really austere conditions and things like that. Well, now we're pretty much ensured that just about anyone who wants to is going to survive and can have kids. But that doesn't stop that evolutionary impulse, the motivation to control. It has to manifest. And so it manifests in controlling things, controlling people, controlling money, controlling land, and it's a driver that people don't realize is a driver because it's instinctual.
So that's curious. That's a curious theory, but it's also, it would seem that that instinctual drive or need or desire for control would still manifest itself even if we, let's say, we look at people like anyone can survive essentially now. Like it's no longer the strong survive. Like our society has evolved to a point where we've removed the idea of survival of the fittest, at least within our species. So, I mean, to a degree, we're talking about if we're looking at it with the macro lens. So obviously, there are skills and traits that are necessary to succeed and to get ahead, be it in life in general for survivability, probability, or for in your field or your industry or your art, right? Your creative art. But that's too finite. So if we look at it largely, most humans get to survive, generally speaking, compared to, say, 3,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So, but if we look at the idea, really the history of mankind, and I say this, I've narrated a lot of the history of humankind, these things, and every time I've done it, I did a 30+ hour series for an educational, an e-learning provider, and I've done some other books and things, and every time I've done it, it always strikes me as almost tragically comedic that humankind, us as a species, as we've evolved, even prior to Homo sapiens, but since this is what we got now, that we are basically barbaric monsters who occasionally have the tendency to exhibit acts of great kindness or create things of great beauty. But we're animals. We're animals. We're very tribalistic. We definitely subscribe to that good old reptilian brain. But it's the history of our species is basically just warfare, domination, enslavement, and the strong trampling or utilizing the weak. No surprises there to most people who've read history or students of sociology. But it talking about that theory, that's curious that he's identified it as a way that it manifests in those ways, but I think it would manifest in those ways anyway, because I think that element to exert control exists not just in that idea of to control the environment, where if that exists, that is missing, there's a dearth of environmental control, then it has to manifest in some other way. I think it would be there anyway, even if our environment, it was necessary to somehow exhibit that kind of control
Hmm.
in the environment, because I think it's part of the human creature. I think that's part of who we are right now until we reach that next stage of evolution, which who knows what that'll be, whether we get some. It'll likely be ushered in faster. I mean, if we're armchair speculating through via technology, we'll look at it through implants and augmentations and things that basically will create human beings that are no longer human beings. Definitely not what we would consider Homo sapiens.
Right.
But
Cyborgs.
you know,
The age of
yeah,
the cyborg.
precisely. Resistant. But it's that idea, and that's just my opinion. I am no fine, well learned student of the topic, but just my armchair opinion of it is that it seems to be something that is intrinsic to the current human condition, experience, and
Yes.
creature. But that's I mean, hey, if we get to turn into Borg, that would be cool too. But for that next era of what we become, but you know,
The voices, 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 the voices.